trees in the backwoods night. Red lights cutting through the pine in flight. Bigfoot stomping with his youngling beard. Whispers of tales that ain't too clear. UFOs buzzing solo through the haze. Howling banshees set the forest ablaze. Jersey devil howls, drink rays to the sky. Drunken cryptids party until the morning's night. Yeah. It's showtime, running wild in the moonlight. Stars burn down, watch the freaks all take flight.
To good times.
Raise your glasses to the mysteries divine. It's showtime.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Drunken Cryptids. Real quick special shout out, blademedia.com. Thank you, Dylan, for all the hard work you've done on the website and for the logo. I love it. I appreciate it. Check him out, blademedia.com, BLAYED media.com. And of course, Old Bart's for being a great, wonderful spot for us to record at from time to time. Always welcome to hosting us events and everything. So you guys go check out Old Bart's at 600 North Broadway in North Little Rock, Arkansas. The team out there, you guys, thank you so very much for everything. Appreciate all the hard work you guys have done. I am still fighting the cold laryngitis stuff that I've been dealing with for a couple of weeks, so you got to work with me a little bit. Big news is, though, the Arkansas Cryptid Fest, June 6th, 2026. That's right. We're putting on our own festival. We've already got some great speakers. Todd Neese is going to be there. Betsy's going to be there. I've got Rod Nichols going to be there. And our tonight's guest is going to be there. So definitely it's going to be June 6th, you guys. VIP tickets are for sale. Check the Eventbrite and everything below. And yeah, hoping to see everybody come out and check it out. It'll be a lot of fun. So speaking of VIP speakers of coming to the Arkansas Cryptid Fest, I have the infamous Micheal Cooke. Now, Micheal has done a lot of work working with finding Bigfoot. He's been featured on These Woods Are Haunted. He's done work with Les Stroud on Survivor Man Bigfoot. He's done a lot of work. He's been in the field for quite a long time, 20 years, going out there, researching, filming, trying to get to the bottom of this wonderful creature that we all know and love and would love to meet, Bigfoot, or I keep calling him Sasquatch. So please, everybody, Micheal, welcome to the show. How are you?
Oh, I'm awesome.
Thank
Just
you.
living life, man. LIVIN. Just got to keep on living, man.
Ain't that the truth, man? And I do want to say thank you again for coming on and being a speaker at the Cryptid Fest. I think you have a lot to put out there. Even Todd Neese, when he saw that you were coming, he messaged me and he said, "Oh man, he's a great guy." So thank you again for coming out and doing this.
Oh, no problem. I cannot wait. And Todd, just give a shout out to Todd. Todd has done so much for the Bigfoot community and with Beachfoot, and everything that Todd has done and all the research that he's done is it's much appreciated. Even if Todd doesn't get to see that side a lot, there's a lot of people out there that admire him and look up to him, and I'm one of them. I'm a very not only am I a friend of Todd's, but I'm a very big fan of Todd's, and he's one of those guys where, us kind of people, you and I and Todd, we all have to stick together because of certain things in our past. But the Arkansas Cryptid Fest, I'm super excited. I've been to Little Rock a couple of times in my life, but I've never really explored it, and I'm excited to get out there with you all.
You'll have a good time. Yeah, when you get out here, we'll get you some of the fun tours. We'll show you. Because I do go do all the touristy things here, even though I live here. And I'm like, right, we have these cool things. Let's go check it out. But it'll be a lot of fun. It's going to be in early June, so I'm really hoping the weather is not going to be 1,000 degrees yet. But the VIP speakers, y'all are going to be speaking inside. So there'll be air conditioning and stuff like that. So...
Oh, it's good. I'm 250 pounds of fluff now, so I I'm more of a polar bear than anything now. I like it. I like it cool. I think I got it. My temperature set to 67 degrees in my home.
Oh, okay.
So
Nothing wrong with it. Now, see, I'm a summer guy. I love the heat, and I prefer wearing shorts, which is funny because, last year, me and Todd filmed with Jason Kinsey on Searching for Sasquatch. And the
mhm.
first day I was wearing pants. I was like, okay, I'll wear pants. I was like, going, I can't do this. And after that, the night one, I'm wearing shorts and hey dudes running through the woods with Jason Kinsey. And, oh, no, even my kids are like, and there's dad wearing shorts. I'm like, yep, always wearing shorts.
I like my shorts. I'm a shorts kind of person. I come from originally I'm from Kentucky, southeast Kentucky, so you got to watch up there with the ticks and everything else. But um, I with speaking of weather and stuff, I live in the deep south now. I'm in Alabama. I mean, if you draw a line from where I live and where you live, it's pretty much a straight line, side by side. Um, my whole thing, like in Kentucky, it gets hot. Like the humidity is almost unbearable in the summer. I come here in August, and not only do you have 100% humidity, it's also 100 degrees, and it makes me think. In Kentucky, our theories are that these creatures, these beings, Bigfoot, they go underground during extreme weathers, whether it be the heat or the extreme colds in the winter. Because where I'm from, January, February, March, it gets sub-zero there. It's we've had several days over the past several years in January and February where it gets under zero. And we theorize that these creatures go underground. So what do they do here in the deep south?
So my theory on here for the South is we have cave systems here in Arkansas as well, and I do think they utilize those because the structures that we see to me aren't seriously built for like a for habitat, if that makes sense. That's more, I don't know, like a blind or just you know a simple structure. But I do think they do find cave systems, or like in the summertime, I believe that they hit the hollers because it's cooler down there, and they're staying close to the water to be cooled off.
Well, see, you talk about the tree structures, and for close to 30 years that I've been doing this stuff, the tree structures have always been a point of interest for researchers and enthusiasts alike. And I've had people come up to me I couldn't tell you how many events I've spoke at and done, but they've come up to me and showed me pictures and said that this was a shelter and this and that. And I'm like, where are they sheltering from? Because it, uh, it doesn't make any sense. If that was a shelter and it's just a teepee or a lean-to formation, there's nothing over top of them. It's not a shelter. I firmly believe, and I talk about it in this book. We'll talk about in a few, but I think they're location markers. The tree structures and stuff are location markers. But we encountered the same thing, like you said, in Kentucky. We encountered tree structures that were pretty close to cave openings. So they're making these structures that in their language, or some symbol that says, hey, we go in here, here's the entrance. And I think Les Stroud, I worked on the Smoky Mountains episode, but when he was out with Todd Standing and in the Pacific Northwest and stuff, they found the trees that were pointed the same direction for miles. And I think they used those as waypoints and location markers. But I could be wrong. Who knows?
I can see that because I do think some of the structures could be. waypoints, markers, and I think some of the other ones are territorial markers. And I don't think
I
it's
think the
territory.
X.
Yeah, the X's are. That's why. Yeah, that's what I was going to go with was the X's. In our one research area that we have here, we went there for one cryptid. Very credible eyewitness encounter. Uh, I mean, I had a research. I had no idea what this thing was. I was fully expecting, a Sasquatch, until he went into description, and I sat there going, "I'm sorry, what?" And looking into it, it turned out it could be a potential Nalusa encounter that this guy had. So we went up there to investigate, and we're checking out that one area. And the area was really weird. It was like a dead area, if that makes sense. I mean, everything just seemed to be dead. And I'm like, how are you hunting in here? And we go to the other side of the property. And as we were traveling over, we got in their Jeep, so we were driving to the other spot. I kept noticing these X's. I was like, well, there's an X, and and they were everywhere. And that's when we found a structure, really unique, about 4 foot, maybe 5 foot tall structure that was encased. Actually, I mean, you could actually crawl into this thing and it would protect you. But to me, it kind of reminded me almost of like a hunting blind, because there were 2 game trails on both sides, and where
Mhm.
they could sit there and wait for game to come by and reach out and grab it. So I was I kept pondering, like, why would you find all these X's here on this side where there's a potential Sasquatch, and then on the other side we got some other entity, because that's where the land has been owned since the late 1800s by the same family. And where, they had houses out there, they grew up out there. It's now hunting. They kind of tore everything down. They just use it strictly for hunting now. But, the property owner would tell you, as he told me, he said, listen, he goes, my dad would go out and he'd come back, and, he'd be like, don't tell your mom, but I saw them shadow people things. I saw them shadow things again. Saw them, you know what I mean? And I'm like, well, that's
Mhm.
not Sasquatch at all. But once we did more research, he was like, yeah, I don't mind if y'all come back, but I don't want cameras. And where you're like, well, can respect that one.
Well, as someone, I'm a they. I don't know who they are, but over the years, I've been slowly classified as a cryptozoologist because I do look at all cryptids and and seriously take in consideration of their existences. Um, but with the focus of Bigfoot. And in my experience in this stuff, I've come to find out that sometimes people will say they saw a Bigfoot, and it could be something completely different. And I don't know how to explain that. Um, you're talking about the Manusa, and down here you have the Rougarou, and you get farther south, you get into swamp beasts and everything. And I'll ask you a question. I know that you're supposed to be interviewing me, but I'll ask you a question.
That's fine. Go ahead.
Out of all the cryptids, and I'll tell you mine after you tell me yours. This is you show me yours and I'll show you mine.
Okay.
Out of all the cryptids in the world, what's the one cryptid? Okay, let me go ahead and set this up. You can't say Bigfoot. You
Okay.
can't say Bigfoot. Okay. What's the one cryptid, with the exception of Bigfoot, that you want so bad to exist, but there's just something that just keeps on? You're like, oh, can't do it. Like, I want it so bad. I want it so bad to exist. What is that one cryptid you want to exist, but you're like, it's a hard reach for me.
Loch Ness Monster.
Oh man, you got me. See, that's mine.
Is that yours?
Yeah.
Yep. The Loch Ness Monster is mine. I was the kid in the library, and Loch Ness Monster books, and Bigfoot books. I'm originally from Utah, northern Utah, so I grew up with all the Bigfoot stories. And my step grandpa would he kept a scrapbook full of articles, in the Ogden Standard Examiner, from sightings of people. So I mean, it was yeah, all the time. My whole yeah, it was like yeah, he's up there and he's up there in the mountains. So the Loch Ness monster was probably right there with it. And when everything came out, it was a fake picture. It was a submarine with a toy on it and stuff. And I was just like, oh. And looking at it, you can see it now. You know what I mean?
See, I was a dinosaur kid, and that what's the one out in the Congo, and Bimbay,
Oh, 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 yes. Now that one
yeah,
I think
the
could be real.
Mekele and Bimbay. It could be real,
Yeah.
and but the Loch Ness monster. If you like, I said, I was a dinosaur kid growing up, and I'm a dinosaur kid now. Like, if there's Walking with Dinosaurs, Jurassic Park, whatever it is, I will stop what I'm doing and watch whatever it is. And I'm looking at my library right now. I'm sitting in my office here at home, and there's a lot of books about dinosaurs. That's not cryptid books or anything. It's just history books about dinosaurs. And the Loch Ness monster, though, man, it's always been that one that I want so bad to exist. And you've got people out there that's been researching it longer than you and I have been alive that
Oh
are
yeah.
still doing it. And they're like, "Oh, he's here," or no, I'm sorry, she's here. She's here. Nessie is supposed to be a female,
Yeah, it's supposed to be.
and it. I have a hard time, like, every single time. I don't care what it is. In Search of the Loch Ness Monster on Discovery Channel tonight, and you'll sit and watch 3 hours of this stuff, knowing at the end they're going to be like, "Well, we didn't find old Nessie this time."
Yeah.
So, but Bigfoot's that one. If you would have told me 20 some years ago that I would have been in 25 years, you're going to be researching Bigfoot, and you're going to have a name, and you're going to be writing a book and releasing another book about Bigfoot, I would have very wholeheartedly laughed and said, no, that's not going to be the case, because they don't exist. And then I have my first encounter. And then, that right there, once you have your first encounter, there's a huge difference in being an enthusiast and an experiencer and a researcher. People that experience stuff firsthand, it does something to us. And I wouldn't go as far to say that we're crazy, but and this I didn't veer away from the Loch Ness monster thing. It's kind of going hand in hand. If if it would have never happened, it would have probably never happened, and that would have been it. But something happened to me, and something happened to somebody who researches the Loch Ness monster religiously. So there's something to it. The Loch Ness monster. There's something to it, just like there's something to Bigfoot. Now, you and I both know that Bigfoot, the creature known as Bigfoot, Sasquatch, whatever you want to call it, they exist,
Correct.
and there's no getting around it, because we've encountered these creatures.
Yep.
We've been right there with them. We know people, whether it be doctors, lawyers, military veterans, whatever. We know people in our personal lives that have witnessed these creatures firsthand, face to face encounters. So I think it was Matthew. I forget his last name. Anyway, a friend of mine said that if .000001% of all Bigfoot encounters was true, was real, then that means there's a Bigfoot. All it takes is that 1,000th whatever percent for it to be real. just like with the Loch Ness monster, the Mothman. I have my theories around the Mothman. We can get into that later, but the um, the Rougarou skinwalkers. With skinwalkers, I prefer to steer as far away from that stuff as I possibly can because that stuff freaks me out. The Wendigo and skinwalkers and stuff. Um, and then you get into aliens. I mean, you even the most brilliant people in history have said that we're not alone. We can't be alone. There's no way we're alone in these universes.
Yeah, the numbers
So,
aren't. Yeah, if you just on the math alone on that one, there is other life out there, and I do believe
no,
that.
yeah, I think it was Stephen Hawking that said, "I can prove there's life out there mathematically, and not ever have an encounter myself. I can prove it mathematically that there's something out there." And with Bigfoot, the Bigfoot is the baby here. This is my baby and your baby and a lot of our friends' babies. We have we have thoroughly researched this creature, and there's no way it's not real. Like, I know what I saw, and I mean it took a little time to come to terms with what I saw. And even today, if I walked out in my backyard here and looked out in the woods and one was standing there, it would freak me out because something about it. It's not supposed to be real, but it is, and we know it is.
Well, I think if not supposed to be real is because that's what mainstream everybody's been trying to tell us for hundred. I don't want to say hundreds, but for the past 150 years that no, it's not real. It's not real. It's not real. And so in our mindset, we're kind of, you know, taught and raised into that environment of it not being real. And so when people do encounter something that they've been taught that doesn't exist, it does leave a mark, like you were saying earlier.
Well, you and I are close to the same age. We're just a few years apart, but how many times we're in the same generation? How many times in our lifetimes have not only like the theory of evolution, a real good one is Pluto, the planet. How many times has that changed?
Too
I
many.
mean, yeah, I've got vivid memories of doing science projects where we do the solar system and Pluto is a little bitty marble out there at the end of our solar system as a planet. And now it's a dwarf planet. It's remnants of an asteroid or whatever. Science can be wrong. We went through the most horrible time in our lifetimes 5 years ago during COVID, and people were saying trust the science. Well, I'm sorry, and I'm not being political. I'm not being political about this by no means because I'm a proud libertarian, and I will say that the government is not to be trusted, but the science has trust the science. Okay, you talking about the same science that's changed their minds and theories and hypotheses thousands of times over the course of our time here on Earth, which has not been that long. And you know, a couple months ago, we lost our biggest scientific advocate. Two of them, two of our biggest our scientific advocates for the existence of Bigfoot, Jeff Meldrum and Jane Goodall. We lost them, and they're never coming back. But Jeff stands and Dr. Goodall stands as reminders that science can take a serious look into these creatures, not only Bigfoot, but the Loch Ness monster, um, and stuff like that. Science can be wrong. and science can have a broader mind when it comes to stuff like this.
You're absolutely one. You're right. And losing Jeff and Jane was hard. I was a fan of Jeff Miller. I didn't always agree with everything that he said, but that's the cool thing about being open minded in this community. But at the same time, too, though, he was one of the first, PhD scientist guys to come out and say, okay, this is real. And he came out to disprove it.
Hmm.
His whole premises behind this was he came out to disprove, to say, no, it's not real. The same thing with Scott Walter, when I interviewed him. And they told, that he was asked, to look at the Kensington Stone. And the first thing he said was, okay, but you're not going to like the results. Because he had already had it in his mind that it was fake.
Hmm.
And that opened up a whole door for him, the same as Jeff. Once Jeff started doing this, Dr. Meldrum did, started researching everything, it opened up a whole new door and a whole new world became apparent. Like, okay, these things exist. Sasquatch is one of the few cryptids that we have, you know, First Nation people talk about, other people, you know, ancient people talk about throughout the whole entire world of this creature being here. Now, just because, nowadays we have everybody's looking at a black mirror all the time and everybody's, focusing more on technology, we've gotten away from the natural side of our world. It's not supposed to exist. And they've done a great campaign job of killing that, making fun of Sasquatch, let's see here. There's, so many commercials, so many weird things that they put out there to kind of make him a goofy cartoon character. And even the movie Harry and
Well,
the Hendersons, if you look at, they kind of made Harry be some kind of like goofball, but there was a lot of weird stuff they put into that movie. And was
well, I referenced that movie at the end of my presentations, and you can see my presentation, the um, uh, Bigfoot Revolution next June in Arkansas. Um, at the end of my presentation, though, and I'll give you a preview, I play a clip, the very last scene of Harry and the Hendersons, and it's a clip that will prove to people. I tell people this all the time, man. I say, if you've been in the woods any amount of time, chances are you've been within arm's reach of one of these creatures at some point in your life and never knew it was there. Well, I know it, really, because the last scene of Harry and the Hendersons, when Harry is walking off into the woods, his family appears. That wasn't done with CGI.
no,
That was not done with movie magic. That was done with practical effects where they were hiding in plain sight the whole time. They were there the whole time.
yep,
And Harry and the Hendersons, you can pop culture. God, I'm glad you brought this up. I bring up pop culture in the Bigfoot. Um, a friend of mine, Bill Lancaster, he came out with a documentary several years ago called "Cultured Bigfoot," and Jeff Meldrum and I were both in that documentary. In fact, I've got the poster hanging up right here behind my newly erected Christmas tree. Um, but it talked about the culture around Bigfoot, the researchers and the culture, the conferences, the movies, and stuff like this. But there are so many movies and pop culture references to Bigfoot, and like you said, they they have made Bigfoot into a comical. I'm sorry, I got the hiccups. A comical uh, character, and Harry and the Hendersons. Then you have the Jungle Book, the new live action Jungle Book. They paint King Louie as a Gigantopithecus, which is a theory that these was what these creatures could be, or a descendant of. Which again, we'll get broad with that. We're all descendants of Gigantopithecus. if you follow evolution. But it, one that a lot of people forget about, and I found, I remembered it, and I made this TikTok video, stupid TikTok video, and I've gotten, I mean, it's not viral, but I've gotten several hundreds of likes on it. It's the clip of the Bigfoot in the Goofy movie, the Disney Goofy movie, when he finds the headphones and the Walkman. And kids, I'm sorry, Matt knows what a Walkman is. I know what a Walkman is. Anybody over the age of 35 knows what a Walkman is. Let's. It was a Walkman was the iPhone and the iPad and the iPod before that.
It
That
was
was their
great.
iPods. It was great. And he's back there, and the Bigfoot is back there dancing to "Staying Alive" during that scene. But I mean, sitting here in my library right now, looking straight ahead, I've got an autographed. It was given to me by Lee Majors. It was the $6 Million Man. I remember that episode when it came out of him and Andre the Giant fighting. And Andre was the Bigfoot, but messing with Sasquatch. And there's several. I've seen a. Oh man, was it? I forget what the commercial was even about. So I'm not dropping any commercial
It was
ads here.
it was a beef jerky one.
That was Mess with Sasquatch. Just
Yep.
the other night though, there's a new one out with a Yeti on it.
Oh, of course there
He
is.
he walks he walks into a meeting. There's a Yeti walks into a meeting. The Yeti, Bumble, from Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer.
Yeah.
We're talking before our times now.
Yeah.
That was 60s.
The abominable
Um,
snowman.
the abominable snowman. Bumbles don't bounce. Um, so the Bigfoot in pop culture, along with TV shows, Finding Bigfoot, Expedition Bigfoot, Expedition Unknown, Destination Truth. Uh, there's so many. The one that Brian Sykes was on, where they done the DNA study and determined that the Yeti hair was an escape or an extinct Himalayan polar bear, which is, I mean, it opens up so many doors to that possibility. I have people ask me all the time about the season of Expedition Bigfoot, where they were in Kentucky. They were in my research area. That is where I left from a few months ago to move to Alabama. That's my research area there. And they found a hair sample that came back with chimpanzee DNA. It's not that these creatures are chimpanzee um, like species. Why is there a chimpanzee hair in the middle of eastern Kentucky? And I have my own theories about that, and we can talk about that face to face. But every discovery, every new discovery with Bigfoot opens up a new door, and that is what makes this study, this research, so difficult. Not only to study, but to stick with. And you know what I'm talking about. We've got friends, close friends. You and I both have close friends that have done this for 15, 20, 25 years, and just all of a sudden say, okay, I'm done. Because you not only open up doors, but them doors lead to roadblocks. And every single time you look, Bigfoot has always got one Bigfoot step in front of us. And it's frustrating. But pop
Yes.
culture, TV shows, commercials, it keeps it alive and it keeps the interest. I don't know about you. Nowadays, I'm more during my presentations, during my appearances and stuff, I talk about kids. I say, okay, and there's always children that's going to be in the audience during these presentations. Y'all pay special attention to me and these other speakers because you all are getting ready to take over. We're I'm not respected him more than anything in this world. I'm not Peter Byrne. I'm not John Bindernagel. I'm not going to be doing this stuff when I'm 90. I don't think my body will let me
Yeah,
do
that's my.
this when I'm 90.
I'm with you on that one. I'll be an
Yeah.
armchair at 90. I'll be back to armchair again.
Yeah, I'll be back to armchair. I'll be looking at stuff people bring me. But I don't even think I'll make it to 90. I'll be thoroughly surprised if I'm alive at 90. But uh children are where this is going. And speaking of, uh I've got I'm doing a cartoon now, and it's called Bigfoot and Friends. It's still a year to 2 years out, but we've gotten a lot of dialogue recorded and stuff. And I play, oddly enough, a Bigfoot in it. I play two Bigfoot. I play a Yowie and a Bigfoot in it, and it's not going to be like these other cartoons or these other TV shows or anything else. It's going to be, they want people in there that are actually researchers, and we can give some factual information that they can utilize in this cartoon that will lead children and young adults and adults alike in the right direction, instead of, I'm going to go out in the woods and beat on a tree. Okay. And you've heard, as you've met these people too, where they'll come up to you and say, I went out and done wood knocks and howls. And I'm like, okay, do you know what you were saying?
Exactly.
What do you mean? What do you mean? What am I? Well, I was howling. Okay, that's cool. But do you know what you were saying? I mean, you could be challenging one, or you could be saying, "Hey, I'm open for business."
Exactly.
um,
It's mating season. Come on.
yeah, come on. And I can't think of a worse way to go. To be honest with you, folks, before he hit the record button, we were talking about shark attacks and stuff like that. And I said, shark getting eaten by something and drowning is my two ways I don't want to go. But that's above, way above.
Yes.
I don't want to die from getting made love to by a Bigfoot.
No, I have zero plans of that one. I'm glad you brought up knocking on trees and stuff because, with the tree knocks, I don't think they're knocking on trees. I think, we referenced the tree knock sound due to what it sounds like. Sounds like somebody knocking on a tree. Because I don't think they have a big old piece of hickory out there they carry around and they smack a tree with it. You know,
Nobody's ever witnessed that.
no, no, it's just a sound. Like, my encounter in '02 down at Fort Hood, the tree knock that I heard wasn't a tree knock. It sounded more, you're a veteran, so you'll catch a reference here in a minute. It sounded like a canteen half filled with water that dropped on the ground, that distinct thunk
Yep.
sound. And that's what we heard. And there's nobody out there at all that my thought was there was somebody, there was another unit that thought that maybe we were op 4 or blue 4, and somebody just happened to drop up like their canteen for whatever reason. But there was no other unit there that was messing with us. So
Well, there's another. I have a theory, and I like that theory a lot, for obvious reasons. But I have another theory, and it didn't really dawn on me until a couple of years ago. This movie come out, and it's not even about Bigfoot. It's a horror movie. It's called Bone Tomahawk.
yes,
It's got Kurt Russell in it, and they have these vocalizing membranes in their like, and on their necks, these cannibals, and they make these awful, like, Aztec death whistle sounds. I wonder if this is some kind of vocal trick they're using, the Bigfoot are using, to make a tree knock sound, like, or my last real big encounter. happened in 2018, in October 6th, 2018, when we got surrounded by several, and they wasn't beating on the trees. They were clapping their
Okay,
hands.
okay. So this is where, yeah, this is what I want to hear. I think I've seen this, but yeah, I want to hear this. If you don't mind, start from the beginning of it,
Okay.
because I know what I know what you think they are, and that'll tie into my other research area as well. So I think we have a little bit more in common than we realize. So if you don't mind, share with everybody, because this is fascinating. So yeah, this is all you, baby.
Oh me, in the beginning, in the beginning, um, I had an encounter when I was 16 years old, and most people who know me know the story, and I won't bore y'all with that. One fell off a hill in front of me into a river. I was skipping school one day, and after several minutes of it wrestling around the river, it stood up. Knew it wasn't a bear. Didn't know what it was. 15 minutes prior to that, if you'd have told me Bigfoot exists, I'd probably laughed at you. Um, Fast forward to almost 30 years later, we are we are here, and so in 2018, uh, I was dating Gwendolyn Guthrie. She's a paranormal researcher out of Ohio. She hosts I was just on her show a few weeks ago. Um, in the Folds is the podcast she hosts, and I was dating her and her friend Kenny Smith. They wanted to go out bigfooting, so I decided, I'm going to take them to a research area that's kind of closed. We hadn't had anything happen. We figured that these creatures had moved on. My research partner and I, Glenn Mink, he and I had come to a collective agreement that we needed to figure out where these creatures had moved to continue our research, because this place was dead. We went in there religiously every single weekend for 2 years straight. And when prior to this 2 years, we were in there every weekend. We would have interactions. We would have rocks thrown at us. We would have quote unquote tree knocks. We'd hear whoops and howls. Um, it was a very active research area, but for some reason, one day we went in there and everything stopped. And we thought it was just a fluke, like, oh, well, they took the weekend off. No, for 2 years straight, from 2014 to 2000, or I'm sorry, 2016. We started researching 2014 in that area, is why I said that. From 2016 to 2018, you wouldn't hear nothing. You wouldn't, there was no kind of sign of anything, no tree structures, no breaks, no nothing. So instead of taking my girlfriend and our friend into a very active research area where it's a roll of the dice when you do this. You take new people into a research area, it could spook these creatures, and they're going to move on. It's going to die just like this research area did. So I said, okay, I'll take you into this area. Don't get your hopes up, because we haven't had anything happen in a couple of years. It's but I'll show you where we found some tree structures, where we found some tree breaks and stuff. Um, the ground is very hard, so don't get your hopes up on. I mean, it would have to rain for 100 years before that ground would soften up. It was like a granite and sandstone kind of surface. And an elephant might be able to make a footprint, but we never found any footprints or anything like that. We found scuffles where they moved around, but I'm rambling now. The uh, So I decided to take them in this research area and say, okay, I'm gonna show you where we saw a light one night. We're gonna go up to the lookout, but we needed to be out by dark because I just had come off the road from filming this project, and like that morning, I got home that morning, and we took off that afternoon on October 6th, 2018. And so we get up to the lookout. I show them where a few things had happened. Glenn, Mink, and I witnessed a light in the forest one night, and we got up on the lookout, we set up there. And now, mind you, Matt, it's a 9 mile hike in and out. It's 4.5 miles up, 4.5 miles out. No matter how you slice it, dice it, you can shave off about a half a mile by coming straight down that mountain. It's a half a mile that you don't really need to shave off because, like I said, it's a goat's face, man. It's straight up and down through there. And we get up on the lookout. We're all three kind of done. We're resting. Sun starts setting. We take pictures and stuff. It's beautiful up there. And this is where the mountains of eastern Kentucky meet the rolling hills of the bluegrass of Kentucky. So we're sitting there taking pictures, and it's sun setting. Like there's no stopping it. And it dawns on me that, oh my God, the sun is setting. And when it gets dark there, man, it gets dark. Like dark, dark. So I said, guys, we need to get out of here. We need to get on because I had a one track brain. I had just come off the road. I'd taken some flights out to get home. I was jet lagged. I had a one track mind to have chicken wings and beer by at least 10 o'clock that night. And I said, okay, we come to the crow's foot where you can go east, west, or straight down the mountain. I said, guys, it's very dark. We need to get out of here before it gets even darker because when it gets dark, it still will get darker. And so we start down the mountain. We went straight down to shave the half mile off. And we're going over this rock formation on the way down. Kenny had three flashlights. They were like keychain flashlights. And because I had no intentions of being up there after dark. And we're coming down off this rock formation, and I hear something scuffle and move on the ridge beside of us. And then I hear two distinct footfalls. And I was like, come on. I want to know. I want to hear the other three or four. Let's hope it's a bear or a deer. And nothing ever came. And I said, well, this is not good. We Gwen hears it and Kenny hears it, and they are both, very intrigued about it. And I said, I don't know what y'all are talking about. Let's get on down the mountain. So we get on down the mountain, and the whole way down, I kind of trailed behind them. They were together in front of me. And the whole way down the mountain, I kept on hearing something move right next to me, 100 or so yards up the ridge. And I stopped. And when I stopped, I heard it take two steps. I said, okay, that's what we got. This is what we got. So I ease up to them and I said, guys, let's stop down here and we'll play around a little bit and see what goes on. And we stop at this pretty level place. And I don't do this, but I done it, I guess for semantics and whatever. But I took a stick, I found a stick, and I smacked it against a tree to do a wood knock. And in the TV show on These Woods Are Haunted, season 2, episode 6, it shows the actor playing me smack the tree 3 times. And I never did that. I smacked it once, and the reason I smacked it once is because the tree limb broke when I smacked, but it popped real loud. Pow. And as soon as it popped, not 50 yards from us, pow, something knocked back at us. And Kenny loses his mind. Gwen kept her stuff together, but she drew a circle on the ground and stood in that circle. And she said that it was a symbol that her grandmother had shown her, and she was safe inside that circle. And I said, okay, that's great, but I don't think that's going to protect you. And over the course of 55 minutes, we had this on recording, by the way. As soon as the tree knock happened, Gwen got her phone out and started recording the video. We get in no time we were surrounded. You could hear distinctive movements moving around us. They were grunting, growling, making really light whoops, and they were smacking their hands. They were clapping their hands, and it was sounding like tree knocks. And I'm not talking 100 yards around us. I'm talking yards from us, just out of light shine. And they had us. They were circling us. Now, in my experience with animals, that's a predatory movement.
I agree.
So when this TV show decided to name this episode "The Hunted," that's exactly what was happening. We were being hunted, and I don't know if I've been in a lot of grisly situations in my life, and you have too. And we talked about that beforehand. And if anybody wants to know these grisly situations, by all means, reach out to me and face to face, and we'll have some conversations. But we're not going to talk about them here. But these grisly situations were nothing like being hunted by something like this. The feeling you get deep down in your chest and your stomach, you know that you are no longer top dog in this fight. You're not. You don't even have. You don't. You're not even a pup in this fight. So, Gwen, she's still crouched down in her circle. I walk up to her. Kenny's on the verge of having a coronary, and I said, "Gwen, we've got to go." And I touched her shoulder. And when I touched her shoulder, something ran straight toward us from nowhere, and it stopped just right out of light shine. And before I knew what I was doing, I don't to this day I don't even remember doing it. I drew my sidearm. I carry a 40 caliber Ruger in the woods with me, and it's not for Bigfoot. It's I come from bear country. It's more or less for bear, but it's big enough, high enough caliber where it's gonna wound a Bigfoot if it should threaten my life. And that's the only way that I would discharge a firearm in a Bigfoot's direction if it was seriously threatening my life or somebody I care about's life. And in that situation, that's what was going on. It was threatening my life and people I love. And I verbally come out and said, "Hey, you got to stop. We're leaving." And I told Gwen, I said, "You and Kenny go ahead of me." And she said, "No." And I said, "No, I'm okay. I'm fine with this. I really am." She goes, "What if something happens?" I said, "I'm good. I'm okay with this. I'm okay. I've got a gun. I'll unload, and I might not kill one, but at least they'll know I was there." And I talked her into going in front of me, and I trailed behind probably 15, 20 steps or so. And I said, in my mind, I was thinking, I said, whatever you all are, just leave us alone. We're just trying to get out of here. And I promise we won't bother you again. And it's almost like this fog feeling you get. It's almost like it lifted from me. And I could see the clear path out. So mind speak, telekinesis, whatever you want to call it, telepathy. I don't know if any of that's true or real or what, but I know that when I said that in my head, everything kind of lifted and we were able to get out. And we, like I said, we had this on recording. There's 50 some minutes, 53 or 54 minutes of recording. When she went to save the video, the phone glitched and we lost everything but the first 9 minutes of the whole night. So, and there's so much to that encounter. I'm getting hiccups again. The phone glitching. My phone was on charge in the car. When I got out, it was 100%. 500 yards into the woods, I felt it vibrate in my pocket and the battery was dying. Kenny, his phone had died after fully charged. Gwen had a power bank that she had to keep plugged up to that phone because when she take it off, you could sit and visually watch that battery start draining. And that goes into a whole other realm of stuff that I don't know about. But I'm writing about it. I've got it in the next book that's coming out, but I have no idea. But that encounter, it it was one of those encounters where I wish I could say right here on this show and say, Matthew, I know for a fact what was going on. I wish I could say that, but I don't have a clue what went on that night. I can tell you the story all day long, and people can come up with their own uh, findings, but their conclusions. But me, we're talking 7 years ago. I still don't know what went on that night. Why everything happened the way it happened, other than that's just the way the universe works, and that is a very simple way to get out of that conversation.
I'm with you on that one. Really eerily similar to what happened to me in Fort Hood. I grew up with haunted houses. I grew up in the woods, and then you went to mountains and the Wasatch Front there in Utah. Obviously, with my military career, I was in the woods all the time. That was our job, and our job in the woods is to look for things and people and stuff. So being out there was not a stranger to it, by any means. But what happened that night, we were stalked. Same thing, and that feeling of being hunted, that's a really good way. When you brought that up, I mean, it was bringing back the memories, in '02 down there at Hood, and I'll be honest with you, that was probably one of the most scariest nights I've ever had in my life. And we couldn't leave. I was the NCOIC, guarding the ammunition, and I had two guards, and these poor kids were crying, literally crying, saying, "Sergeant, we got to leave. Can we leave? Sergeant, we got to leave. We got to leave. We got to leave." And I'm like, "We can't." General orders, man. First general order is I will guard everything, limits my post, and quit my post only when properly relieved. So, and yeah, we had a giant rock thrown at us. Something walked right up to us. You could hear us clearly bipedal strolling. And this is where I thought earlier that it was actual another unit out there thinking that we were the Op 4, the Blue 4, because we weren't being quiet. You know what I mean? We weren't being sneaky. We weren't doing, noise, too much noise and light discipline out there because it's an ammunition holding area. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
So, but by about an hour into the encounter is when I was like, okay, this isn't people. This is something else. And the way it moved was everywhere. So, I was a highly trained, fully, disciplined, you know, badass non-commissioned officer in the United States Army Infantry with a bunch of specialized training behind me, and whatever was there wasn't it. But you're right. It's a scary feeling.
And it's scarier. You said something just then, something that can be in one place but everywhere at once.
Yeah.
And it takes me back. I never saw one of these creatures run until 2012, and it was on thermal in northern Georgia, and we saw one. It was the fastest moving biological thing I've ever seen. It disappeared so quick, like it moved so fluidly through thick undergrowth that all you can describe about it is that it was supernatural in nature. And I don't know what these things are. And I never say that. Like I never. A friend of mine wrote a review of this book, and when it came out, and she said, if you're looking for all the answers and definitive proof of what these creatures are, this is not the book you need to read, because he never does say what it is, and I never will. Unfortunately, the only way we will know for 100% fact what these creatures are, biologically, DNA, and all that, is with the unfortunate discovery of a body. I won't be the person to bring that to the table. I won't blatantly kill one for fame and fortune. Um, and there's people out there that will, and all you can say is those people will either do it or they won't. I've had hunters tell me, and I'm a hunter myself. I've had hunters tell me that they have pulled the trigger with 308s, 300 Win Mags, 7 millimeters, and 30-06s, calibers of rifles that are meant to take down grizzly bears, and it doesn't even phase these creatures. So I don't know if anything could take one down. I had a guy ask me as during a interview, kind of like this one time. He said, "What would you do if you walked up on a dead body of a Bigfoot? What would your steps be?" And I said, "Well, first thing I would do is change my pants. The second thing that I would do is I would call the news." And he cut me off and he said, uh, "Why the news? Why not the police?" And I said, "Oh, the police are going to come. Because when I call the news, I'm going to call the news station. Can you still hear me? I had to switch earbuds.
Yeah, I still got you.
Uh, when I call the news, this is what I'm going to say. My name is Micheal Cooke. I have killed my wife and kids. Um, I am at this location. I'm sending you a pin right now. I'm unarmed, but come get me." So the news is going to have this exclusive. They're going to show up with the cops. And when they show up, I'm going to be sitting there with the dead body of a Bigfoot that I'd found that I walked up on. And they're going to say, "Where's your wife and kids?" And I'll say, "I'm not married and don't have kids." But check this out.
It's a good
Because
plan.
it's a good plan, because there have been several instances where people have called 911 because they saw these creatures. And they just kind of laugh it off. That's what I told Gwen that night when I told her to move on away from me and let me trail behind. She said, "What if something happens?" I said, "I'm okay with this, but if something should happen, get to the car, call 911, and but don't say Bigfoot because they won't come."
No.
Um, and that's the unfortunate world we live in. Um, but flip side of things, there's a lot of cops and a lot of park rangers and game wardens and so forth and so on that have had these encounters, and they are forced to keep these encounters hush hush because of their careers. And I had this state trooper, his Kentucky state trooper, tell me one time, he said, "I'm going to tell you something. I'm not saying these creatures are real. I'm not saying they're not. But if I ever have an encounter, you can guarantee," and this is sad when I say this, Matt, and I didn't know this. He said, "If I ever have an encounter face to face, one crosses the road in front of me, you can guarantee $43,000 a year is not going to keep my mouth shut." And I said, $43,000 a year? And he went, "Yeah, that's what I make." And I went, "Yeah, no, I couldn't keep my mouth shut for that."
No. No, I'm like the worst one. Yeah, I'll be honest with you. It doesn't matter. I mean, that's why I was loved and hated in the military. Because I was real quick to call out, going, "Oh wait, this is BS." But no, one, I think you're right. I mean, the first, yeah, there's too many cases. Not only where it's not believed by 911, but you reach out to certain, you know, alphabets in the government, and it turns into it disappears, and it wasn't there, and no, that's not what you saw, and that's not what you found. There's a ton that happens, but you said, if you stumble across a body in the woods, and I think one of the reasons why we've never stumbled across upon a body is, we're talking about, bear country. How many times have
Mhm.
we found the body of a bear?
Never.
Yeah. I mean, they're there. I mean, we know there's bears out there, right? We know that. So, and I go off of, and I try and use it as a population number. The population of Sasquatch out there is a lot smaller than the population of bear. We'll see dead animals on the side of the road, but even out there in nature, though, it's pretty rare. You're going to find you might find bones if you're lucky, what I mean, of a
Well,
deer or the carcass of a raccoon or an armadillo or some of those things. But nature has a way of cleaning itself up really quick. And as we
what
were
is it?
talking about, yeah,
What, 28 hours? Um, that's how long it took nature to reclaim the body of the deer. They laid out and put cameras on in 28 hours. By the time the scavengers, the insects, and bacteria had taken hold in
that's
the
pretty
middle of the
quick.
woods, 28 hours. That's a day and 4 hours. So,
Nature's really good to where, like, we referencing Harry and the Hendersons, and the two things that stood out to me, besides the ending scene, which always that was like huge, but I like watched it again this year. And in the beginning of the movie, after they hit Harry and Harry wakes up and freaks out and he's running around and he ends up in the house, if you notice, he's grabbing, the remains of, because the Hendersons, was a big hunter. So he
mhm.
had, minks and deer and everything all over the place. Harry wasn't mad that, or associating the fact that the Hendersons had killed them. The first thing he did was grab them and rush them out to the garden and bury them.
Yep.
And I remember watching that scene and I was like, no, wait a minute. And how they did Harry there at that point, and we was looking up at him. He was looking up mournfully, like, how come you didn't, what I mean? You're supposed to, bury them, not, yeah.
And you look at in the with the theory and hypothesis that these creatures are apex predators. They apex predators will go off. Um, Bears, for a good example. They won't just go off in the middle of a field and die of natural causes. They'll go find a hole, they'll find a cave, and they'll go there where they're protected, their bodies are protected, and they'll die. That way, they're not predated on. Um, and Bigfoot, why couldn't they bury their dead? Why couldn't they do what bears and wolves and stuff like that do, and just find somewhere to go and go lay in their grave and die?
I agree
Um,
completely. I agree. I mean, I'm on
but
that one.
but then you get in like in the up north, you got porcupines and squirrels and stuff that and wood mice that eat bone, and it'd probably take a while for them to eat a 800-pound Bigfoot, but nevertheless it will go back. You do go back, and that's like humans. We have this preconceived notion that just because we're in a casket in the ground, we're protected. I'm sorry, but there's thousands of TikTok videos when they exhume caskets where dirt and water and everything else will flow out of those caskets.
Yep.
We always go back, no matter what. The Bible itself says dust to dust, and we go back. So everything is reclaimed back to nature. Um, with these creatures, the bodies and the only way I think that we would ever come across a body is like on Harry and the Hendersons. Somebody hit one and act fast and get it somewhere. But you and I have heard these stories, and everybody else has heard these stories about Mount St. Helens and the wildfires in Northern California, where they'll find these Bigfoot bodies and they'll take them off. I don't know, militarily speaking, they're not doing, folks. I'm sorry, the military, no matter what branch it is not doing all these crazy experiments you think they are. They're not.
No.
Now, the Coast Guard's pretty sketchy. I don't know about them. You,
Yeah,
you know as well as I do, they've got some mermaids.
yeah, them
But
Coasties and them Space Force guys, man, that's what you got to watch out for.
I met some Space Force guys the other day in Huntsville. They were pretty cool. They were a little out there though. Uh, but no, them the military's not doing all these crazy now. Backtrack a little bit. Back in the 50s and 60s, yes,
Well, so on that token too,
yes.
so all right, this is what I like to try and get out there somewhat because I rarely use for my show or anything, my military background. I rarely do. Um, but once since it's been brought up, you know, like my encounter was on a military installation. I was in uniform. I was active duty Army when this happened. So I don't think, and being in the service and being, in a combat MOS, um, they talk about, the military was extracting and doing this. There's a lot of people involved in doing that stuff, from what, we've heard from, the fires and Mount St. Helens. There's
Mhm.
some private somewhere going, hey, y'all, we just took a body of Bigfoot out in 1980. Seriously. I mean, that's exactly, there's going to be some private that is going to open up, and you can scare him all you want, but he's going to talk. The
Or he's gonna
only
tell
thing
his
that's,
girlfriend, his wife,
yep.
or his kids, or something.
Now, we bring into the Kandahar giant to where this is where on the Kandahar giant, I'm on both sides of the fence on this one, whether it being real and whether it being unreal of an encounter, because it did start off with soldiers coming out and saying, hey, this is what we saw. This is what we witnessed, because you have, everybody has their, Hollywood's painted a, and I give Hollywood props. I mean, they painted, the American soldiers just tight lipped up and we're, doing all this. No, 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 they're not. They're not at all tight
They're
lipped.
not.
You know,
Yeah.
I mean, seriously. I mean, you were in, I was in. I mean, you can go to any military installation and find any bar and strike up a conversation with any soldier, and they're going to talk. When I was traveling, I was in Clarksville, Tennessee, and I went to this restaurant bar and hanging out. And of course, I got Fort Campbell right there, and I ended up visiting with a bunch of young infantry soldiers, air assault kids from Campbell. And there's talking about, Iraq and Afghanistan and everywhere. I mean, everything. And these are young kids at the time. I was sitting there going, oh, wow, just keep right on talking. But that's what we, and I was in, I did that. You know what I mean? Oh, yeah, I just got back from the field. I mean, this is what we do. Yeah, we're, hardcore, we're
We
badasses. And
all do, and it's so funny because Bigfooters are the same way. I mean, in or out, no matter what, you get a bunch of like at these conferences. You all want to hear some secrets and stuff. All you gotta do is find the hotel bar, find a lodge bar,
yep.
and go sit down and talk to one of us. Get us a couple of beers in, and we'll sit there and sing like little songbirds.
Yep.
And it's the same concept. Like Air Force guys, um, no disrespect whatsoever. I've got several good friends within the Air Force, but they're the ones who let loose on the whole Pacific Northwest training missions when they were briefed and said, "Hey, uh, you could encounter these creatures. Here's protocol." And you have rules of engagement and protocol and everything you do, no matter what branch of the military. But like you said, if the Army, any branch of the military was doing secret uh, expos of Bigfoot creatures out of natural disaster areas, it would be a little bit more than a conversation at a bar. You would have some private or somebody on Fox News right now
Oh, yeah.
showing the pictures they took.
But, so I'm going to flip that script around too, though. So here's the other cool thing that a lot of people don't realize as well, though. So let's talk about, so on the military side, and since we're not talking, government cover ups and stuff, there are, in the military, obviously we have the special forces, we have the Navy SEALs, we got Delta
Mhm.
Force, we've got Force Recon, there's so many of them, the Rangers and such. So now, if you want a secured site, that's a different story. With small assets, who are going to keep it quiet, those are who are that you would bring in. But for the extraction of, like Mount St. Helens and the California wildfires, that's a huge deployment for these small units. Special forces are small. It's a small unit, and they use small unit tactics. So, like, for the Kandahar Giant, how that got leaked out though was from the airbase. That wasn't leaked out from the guys on the ground there. That was leaked out from the airbase, and that they had recovered this body, and then so that's when finally somebody else came out and said, okay, yeah, I was there. This was the fight that took place with it. So, that's where I have issues sometimes with the Kandahar Giant, where I don't. But soldiers will talk. In all honesty, the government knows this, and that's why during World War II they were like, loose lips, sink ships. Don't tell people where you're going. Don't do this. Don't do that. And even in the military, you don't get notified before you get deployed. You don't get, what I mean. You get told, okay, we're leaving. Oh, okay, you know, because it's
Well, one of the things you gotta look at too. The United States, we are notorious for keeping certain things hush hush as far as military exercises installments. So you could go all the way back to the naval experiments with like the Philadelphia experiment and all that stuff. And recently in the last few years, we've had the naval release of the UFO files and Air Force and all this, which everybody knew about that because of Project Blue Book and everything. Then, but you have like certain military around the world. Russia, their military, ground forces, air forces, whatever, they have a special division that is dedicated to the studies and possibly the discovery of the Yeti, the Almas, and it dates back. to World War II when the Russian uh, ground troops came upon what they deemed as a caveman, modern day caveman, and they shot it and left it in the cave. But then you fast forward to Dyatlov Pass and whatever happened there. And I done this show a couple years ago about the Dyatlov Pass, and I hate to be the bearer of bad news. I've been there. I've been to that area. Um, yeah, I would be hard pressed to think that was a Bigfoot like creature that done that. I firmly believe it was a military exercise that caused a avalanche, and these kids were just in the wrong place at the wrong time. And people say, well, their tongues were removed with surgical precision. Have you ever seen a bird eat? Birds will take the soft tissue first, the eyes, the tongue, gums, stuff like that. They'll take it first. And birds are surgical in nature. They're very precise with when they're eating. Um, but there you go again. Who knows? I don't know. With that incident, but Russia, North Korea has their own division for UFO encounters, and that's something a lot of people fail to realize and remember. North America is not the only place where we have UFOs, Bigfoot encounters, lake monsters, chupacabras, and stuff like that. Even chupacabra is not a North American cryptid; it's a South American cryptid. Um, but people tend to forget that everything that you're encountering and hearing about here in America, it's going on in Russia, England, Japan, China, Australia, so forth and so on.
It's
Um,
worldwide.
it's worldwide. It's a worldwide phenomenon, and one of these things is going to be proven, and that's going to open up the door for the other ones. And I'm very fascinated. I read into a lot of stuff when it comes to daggone hiccups. Well, when it comes to
See, if you drank coffee, you wouldn't have that.
I see, I'm drinking apple juice. This is what my problem is.
Ah,
The uh, One of the things that I'm very interested in is the de-extinction process now, and I reference this in this presentation too. And I talk about Colossal and their efforts to de-extinct the dire wolf has been the first one. Well, now they have on their plates the dodo bird and the woolly mammoth. The woolly mammoth, I don't know. I hope we can see one day. Gestation period, the pregnancy for a modern day elephant is 2 years.
yep.
And, they have to figure that out and they have to get this and that going. But almost every single animal they have on the de-extinction list right now, they went extinct because of us. We they were directly uh, they were direct victims of human involvement, human overhunting, or the dire wolf. We killed elk and buffalo and bison and stuff like this. We over killed all this stuff, and we took their food sources away. So yeah, they went extinct. The thylacine, thylacine was hunted to extinction, and you know, a lot of people want to disagree with the de-extinction process and say, you're playing God and this and that. Well, not really. We're correcting our mistakes. Leave the world better than you found it. And the same holds true with woods and stuff like that. When you go in the woods researching, leave the woods better than you found it when you went in. Bigfoot doesn't litter, so pack your Snickers wrapper back up in your backpack. It's going to sit there until you get home. It's going to be fine. I promise. Pick up a pop can you see in the woods. Leave stuff better than you find it, and that is segueing back into Bigfoot. But that's how I want to leave the Bigfoot research world, better than I joined.
I like
I
that.
would like to. I would like to see more open mindedness. I would like to see more acceptance. And I'm not gonna. I've never been a proof guy. I've never been one of these people that I'm going to be the guy that discovers. No, I've never been that guy. But appreciate what you see and what you encounter, and leave the research world one day better than you found it. Show people that nurses, doctors, lawyers, computer techs, whatever you are, show them that you can go out and do this stuff, and therefore, I'm sorry to say it like this, get your lazy asses off the couch and go out and walk around the woods a couple times a day, a couple times a week, month, and leave it just like leave it better than you found it. The Bigfoot community has been struck hard the last couple of months with death and losses. Jeff Meldrum, he was my friend. Jeff and I spoke at the West Virginia Bigfoot Festival last year together, and not one time had Jeff ever came and sat in on one of my presentations. And for some reason that day, I had two presentations to do, and it was so hot that day. Jeff got up and he came into the presentation room. I'm assuming because it was cooler, and he sat through a pretty good portion of my presentation. And I told him after the fact, I said, when you walked in, I started sucking up. I said, I didn't know how to act. And he goes, I could tell. And I said, well, our views, man, we've known each other 20 years, and our views differ so much on what these creatures are. And Jeff Meldrum said it just like this: just because our views and opinions are different doesn't mean that they're wrong in each other's eyes. And that's something we have to realize, we have to remember every single time somebody puts something on Facebook or social media, whether it be X, Facebook, Instagram, whatever you use. Okay, instead of belittling people when they put a footprint on Facebook that is a bear print. I know, you see the claw marks, and they're saying, I found a footprint today. You will have 1,000 people come at them and go, you don't know what you're effing talking about. Go somewhere else with that BS and all this. Instead of say, well, let's look at it and, come at it in a diplomatic stance. The Bigfoot community, and I don't know about the paranormal community, but I assume it's the same.
It is.
I've
I mean,
heard, I've heard,
both communities are. I'll be honest with you. Both communities are horrible. I hate saying that. I really do. But it's everybody attacks everybody.
yeah, and there's no reason for that. And the reason they do that is because they're hiding behind their screen.
Oh yeah.
Now, I've had people, we were talking about fans and stuff like that. On the flip side of things, to kind of bring people up to speed, Matthew and I were talking about encountering people that know us in public and in a different setting than what we're used to. Um, on the flip side of the fans, I've had people come up to me and try their very best to start a fight over this stuff. And like to the point of getting in my face and me having to remind them, you don't know who you're effing with when you do this. Um, but please get out of my face before this turns against you. And I've had people just run up to me and tell me how wrong I am. Good example. And I have witnesses on this one. This just happened last month, by the way, in South Carolina at the South Carolina Bigfoot Festival. I go to it every year. Um, it's my favorite festival so far. Arkansas's got a lot to live up to, so
Hey, it's
it's
my
my
first
favorite.
one. It's my first one.
We'll give you some slack, but the uh, the South Carolina Bigfoot Festival is my favorite festival to go to. I'm around people I know. I grew up with. I grew up in South Carolina. Um, they're in that town, but I was at my booth this year, and I was getting ready to go in and do a joint presentation with Terry Wendell. He's a research partner of mine and arguably one of my best friends. But we were going in to talk about an encounter him and I had a few years ago there in South Carolina, and I was getting my stuff prepared, and my handler was there with my booth and everything. And this girl walks up, and I say girl, I ain't saying lady, I ain't saying woman. She was a girl. She wasn't much older than 25, 26 years old. She was a child to me. Um, Her and her boyfriend walk up, and she was like, "What's your book about?" And my book, folks, literally, my book is called The Bigfoot, Volume One. And I was probably being a smart ass, but I said this to people all day long and got laughs. And she goes, "What's your book about?" And I said, "I'll give you one guess." And she was like, "Well, I'm assuming Bigfoot." And I'm like, "Yeah." I said, "It goes along with the in the beginning." It goes along with there's no stories in this book. It's one story, one encounter. It's the only encounter in here is my first encounter that I had. It's the first chapter. It's called The Riverbank. And I said, then I go into the history of Bigfoot, the indigenous beliefs, early European accounts, explorers and stuff like this, all the way up to modern day. And this is what got her modern day research, genetics, DNA samples, and stuff like this. She says, I love it when people say stuff like this to me. Well, do you know what I do for a living? And I was really close to saying, I don't know, you're a stripper. I don't know you. I've never met you a day in my life. But I said, I have no idea. I can't look at somebody and say, this is what you do. You can't look at me. You never, people find it very difficult when they find out what I do for a living. But um, she says, I'm a geneticist. Okay, that's cool. You don't look like you're a day over 10, but that's cool. And she goes, where do you send your DNA off to? I said, I don't. Mainly because the expense of it. It costs a lot of money. Folks, you don't go out find a hair sample that might be a Bigfoot and pay 5 grand to get it sampled. I don't have that kind of money laying around.
Nope.
I sure, if I did, it sure wouldn't be expendable.
No.
And the only way, and this is my exact words to her, I said, the only way that I would ever send a hair sample off to get DNA tested would be A, I saw the Bigfoot actually lose the hair. B, I ripped it from him myself. The only two ways that would actually happen. Because their hairs, their fur is so similar to bear and other creatures. It It's a lot of money. So she says, "Are you speaking?" And I was like, "I am. You're invited. You can come in. It's free. Come on in and you can sit through our presentation." So I walk in, Terry and I start a presentation. And toward the end of it, we said, "Has anybody got any questions?" Now, Matt, the whole time, this girl and her boyfriend was against the back wall because they were standing room only. She was standing back there with her arms crossed, complete defensive or offensive body posture. And this girl in the front row says, "Why do TV shows, i.e., Finding Bigfoot, Expedition Unknown, and stuff like that, why is it whenever they send their DNA samples off that they come back inconclusive or contaminated or whatever?" I said, "Well, do you want the truth or do you want me to give you the sugar coated version?" And she said, "I would rather the truth." And I said, "Okay." For the most part, the not just one TV show, not Expedition Bigfoot or Finding Bigfoot or any of the other shows, not one, but all. For the most of them, for the most part, they never get sent off. They are in the back of a camera van riding down I-2 right now, going to the next location. You said it when you asked the question. These TV shows. That's something you have to always remember. What you watch on TV is a TV show. It is there for entertainment and entertainment alone. The reason Finding Bigfoot never found Bigfoot was because it would have been our jobs. That would have been it. And there were plenty of opportunities. I will say that. But cost is another thing. You're talking sending these things off, man. They're $5 to $10,000 a sample. There's not that money laying around. Budgets are budgets. Whether it's your own personal budget or a TV show budget, it's a budget. So the girl back there against the wall who came up to me at the booth, her first words were, "I'm a geneticist." And I'll say this: the right the right genetic company would test those for free. "Mr. Cook, where do you put your DNA at?" And Matt, I promise to God on everything good and holy on this earth, if Terry Wendell wasn't standing there pinching the fire out of me, I was coming out with your mom. I promise you that.
You know,
And
so
I said, as I discussed with you outside, I don't send anything off. "Well, how do you know these things are real?" "Because I've seen them." "Can you prove you've seen them?" "I can prove one encounter. I can't prove my first encounter because I was alone. All you can do is take my word for it." And believe me, there have been times over the course of the last 25 years that I wish had never happened. And she was like, "Then why do you come up here and say you're an expert?" And when she said that, you can ask anybody in that room. I got up because I was sitting on the stage. I got up, I walked over to her, and I said, "Get the F out right now and don't come back in here." And her boyfriend squared up with me. And I said, "Believe me, you don't want this, Junior. Take her out now." And when they walked out the door, the whole crowd started clapping. But that's the only time I've ever had to physically make somebody leave. I've put up with a lot of stuff. In my presentation before I started this new one, and this is a different presentation every year because I add and take away. I used to talk about Daniel Boone and the Yahoo story. I had a guy in Virginia, Northern Virginia, one time storm out of a library presentation I was doing, get on Facebook Live in the parking lot, and start saying that I was claiming that Daniel Boone, the frontiersman, went to Australia and killed a Yowie. And I said, I walked out in the parking lot and I looked at him. I went, a Yahoo is the name that these creatures were given by the Cherokee Nation. That's what they called it back then. You moron. But yeah, people are stupid, man.
Well, part of that is the fact of the matter that, and I like how you said to where, there's times you wish you didn't have the encounter, because of, a lot of the ridicule. And there is a lot of ridicule. And, I have, I'll go out and talk to people, and it's the same thing. I get hunters, people all the time. Man, I'm in the woods all the time. I've never seen this. There's nothing out there, blah, 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 blah. But there's always one or two that will stick around for a minute, pull me aside, and be like, no, let me tell you something that happened to me, or let me tell you something I saw, or, you know, more people have encounters than are willing to admit they had an encounter with something. Not saying it was Sasquatch, but they had an encounter with something out there. But it's easier and safer for people to not believe in it than it is to believe in it. And a lot of
See,
folks who,
that's
yeah, a lot of folks who've had the encounters too, though, it scars them. It does leave a mark. I've got, and I talk about Jacob, all that, when we went up to our one investigation there for the first time, and I just sent you some pictures on Facebook, by the way, of this knuckle track that we found, and we got growled at. I mean, immediately we got growled at. I mean, this is in the daytime, and a growl came right in front of us, and I was like, we all heard that, right? And then
mm,
immediately behind us, we heard a little tree knock. And then shortly after that's when I found this knuckle track, and it's a fresh track. So something had recently just been there. And then that evening, as we were getting ready to go back out again, Jacob pulled me aside and he said, "Hey, I'm not going to lie to you. I don't know how I'm going to react if we encounter something." And and to be honest, that was probably my respect level for Jacob went through the roof that day. You know what I mean? For him looking at
well,
me and saying that. And I said, "You know what?" I said, "That's fine. If we do encounter something tonight and you can't handle it, great. Back out, get out. I don't, there's no point in getting to the point where you're uncomfortable and scared." And then he looked at me and he
that's
goes,
like,
"Yeah." And he goes, "Why don't these people move?" And I said, "Well, they live here. This is their property. This is their land. And they're not trying to get rid of it. They're trying to figure out, A, what it is, and B, how to cohabitate." And I said, "And that's what we're here to try and possibly help." I said, "I'm not an expert by any means." I said, "But, that's what we're here to do, to figure out what's going on these people's property." And that night we had nothing until near the end. And right at the end, we got huffed at. And that was surreal. I'm not gonna lie, I was grinning like a kid in a candy store. I was just like, yeah, all excited. We got huffed at. And, Jacob and the property owner just kind of looked at me like, "Are you nuts?"
that's like, you said something about hunters and stuff. And after I had my first encounter, I went a year without saying no person, um, no, no person automatically comes up and says, that was a Bigfoot. No, you go through a lot of you go through a lot of emotions before you come to that conclusion. But when I had my first encounter, my dad, I went through a year, and one night we were watching Unsolved Mysteries, and I hadn't told anybody about this encounter. Um, and I look up about the time the Patterson Gimlin film was rolling, and Patty turns her head and goes down the riverbank. Well, my dad said that I just got pale, and he said, "Son, you all right?" And I said, "No, Dad, I've got to tell you something." So I went through this whole thing. And for a year, I was scared to death knowing my dad was going to laugh at me, call me crazy, and stuff like this. And not one time when I was talking did he ever crack a smile. And when I got done talking, I said, "What do you think? You think I'm crazy?" He said, "No." I said, "Do you think I'm lying?" He said, "No." I said, "Then why? What's going on?" He goes, "They're out there." And I said, "What do you mean? You knew about this?" He goes, "Yeah, yeah, they're out there. Why wouldn't you never tell me?" And he said, "Would you have ever went hunting or fishing or hiking or anything like that by yourself?" Hell no. He said, "Your life's been better not knowing." And he said, "I'm sorry that you had to find it out like this." So, I use the example. People, I've had the same people come up to me that you come up to you and say, "I've hunted in this area all my life and I ain't never seen Bigfoot, therefore they don't exist." That's cool, dude. I've been to the ocean many times, and I've never had a whale swim up to me, so therefore they don't exist. Well, no, that's different. How? How is that different? If there's not a whale right where I'm swimming at, then therefore they don't exist. Yeah, but you've seen whales. I've never seen a whale. I've seen killer whales at SeaWorld. Never seen a whale. I said, let's just take it a little simpler. Let's walk out in the backyard. If there's not a cougar mountain lion walk out in my backyard, then therefore they don't exist. Because I've never physically seen a mountain lion in real life in the woods. He said, "Well, you're not using you're not that's not logical. It's not logical what you said. You hunt in the same spot every year, probably for the last 40 years. So just because you've never had a Bigfoot walk through there while you're there, that means they don't exist." And then I'll stand there and put my hands in my pockets. My argument's done after that.
Yeah, I'm
I
with you
don't
on
have
that
any.
same argument because
Yeah.
we would go to the Wind Rivers up in Wyoming all the time. You know, my real dad, we had horses, so we'd always go up on horseback, and the on horseback, it's a good 5 6 hour, trek up. So we're deep into the Wind Rivers, and this is late '80s, early '90s. So there's no cell phones, nothing. You're up there, and we go up there every summer for a week and go fishing, just enjoy being up in the mountains. And this grizzly bear territory. And how do you
Yeah.
know? Well, I've seen eye level as I'm on a horse, the claw marks on a tree. And I remember the first time, I saw one, I was a teenager, and my dad, he was right in front of me, and he pointed at the tree, and he goes, "Nope, we're not camping here. We're going to keep riding." So we rode an extra hour away from that one tree, so we wouldn't be in grizzly bear territory. But now we saw the mark. We know the grizzlies are out there. Did we see one? No. Every time we've gone up there, we've never encountered a grizzly. We've seen moose, seen elk, seen deer, everything else up there, but never a grizzly or a black bear. And we know for a fact that they're up there. So, what's to say that they don't? That's the same track. They're not real.
No, they're not. I mean, logically, that's like when people come. Everybody wants to use the Patterson Gimlin film. What do you think about the Paris Gimlin film? You think it's real? In my opinion, I know Bob Gimlin. I've had the conversation with Bob Gimlin. I've heard him tell this story over and over and over again, face to face, around campfire or at dinner somewhere. I know Bob Gimlin. I firmly believe Bob is telling the truth. I've been right where Bob and Roger was at Six Rivers National Forest on Bluff Creek, right there at the end of the bowling alley they call on the creek bank where Patty walked in front of him. Logistically speaking, to fake that, let's just tongue in cheek, let's just say that it was faked. Logistically speaking, it would have been an utter nightmare to get that up there. The suit itself would have weighed 500 pounds. And to have somebody hold that up and move that fluidly with that suit on, yeah, it would have took a bodybuilder, to say the least, like the bodybuilder of the world. Getting it up there would have been a nightmare. And believe me, the guys over in Bluff Creek, the Bluff Creek project that's out of Willow Creek and all that, Robert Latterman and all them guys, they have went through this over and over and over and over and over again. How would you do it? Now in today's times, it'd be pretty easy. But you'd have to get the suit in there to fake it. But the off chance that they ever had that in their minds, number one, it wasn't faked. It was Bob Gimlin saw what he saw. Roger Patterson filmed what he filmed, and that's the base of it. Now, does that mean you and I can go out to Bluff Creek right now today and have that same encounter? Absolutely not.
No.
And that's what people, going back to that whole stance that people have. They think they can go to these encounter spots and have an encounter of their own. I had people come up to me a while back at an event I was doing. They said, "We've been to Bluff Creek." Not Bluff Creek, I'm sorry. We have been to Boggy Creek. So in Arkansas? Yeah. Around Falk? Yeah. Okay. What'd you find? Nothing. About right. That's about right. You're not going to find anything remotely related to the beast of Boggy Creek if you're basing your study on that. Because number one, the Beast of Boggy Creek was a movie. And it was based on a couple of stories. And that's it. Now, if you wanna come back east a little bit, and there's a couple of lakes you could probably have an encounter. Maybe. I don't know. But if you're going out looking for the Beast of Boggy Creek, you're not going to find it. You're better off finding it in a library or online on a DVD, because that's the only thing you're going to find about Boggy Creek. And I think it's funny that the Boggy Creek Bridge, it's got a little bitty plaque on it. It says Boggy Creek. That's it.
That's it. I mean,
That's it.
and that's the thing too. And we're coming up on 2 hours now, so I got to get ready to bring in for landing. But it comes down to. So I tell everybody, when you do go out and research, we're going to find less than we're going to find of anything else. To be honest with you, I've spent more time looking than I have seeing. And I've had some good encounters, and I've got some pretty cool stuff that's happened to us. But even if we've had nothing at all, it was still a lot of fun. A prime example, we were talking about TV shows and stuff. Most TV shows out there, they are going to show, okay, we just, it's funny. Okay, we just had something happen over here. And, they don't ever try and elaborate. And they're like, yeah, this is all, yeah, this is where they're at. The show that I was on was Search for Sasquatch with Jason Kinsey. We caught absolutely nothing. Nothing. And, as he said too, the show was called Searching For, not Finding, not, what I mean? Not getting, Sasquatch. So the only thing that happened to us while we were recording was at night on our night investigation. And I had something, I had been standing there looking. We were all on a line. It was where we were at. We had this natural bridge behind us. It was really cool set up. And we were right at this valley. So we're looking kind of down this slight slope valley. And Todd Neese was to my right. He was probably a good, I don't know, about 10, 15 meters to my right. And on our way down, we had heard something. Me and Todd did. We weren't filming at the time. We were, walking down to where we were going to film at. And me and Todd stopped. We were looking, and I was like, "That's not normal." He goes, "No, that's not normal. There's something down there." So he went one path, and I went another path. Obviously nothing that we could find. So at night, I'm standing there, and we got the flashlights on. I'm looking, and there's a branch laying in front of me, and I was like, "Well, that's an odd spot for this." I don't know why it stood out to me. It just stick did. So I started looking at the trees that were by me, excuse me, thinking that maybe tree branch would fall. It didn't match any of the trees. And I'm looking up and I was going, okay, well, maybe this is what we heard when we were coming down. And I turned my back and I'd taken like 2 steps and something come rushing up behind me. And my first thought was, okay, well, because I was thinking of Todd at the time, I was thinking, okay, Todd walked over here. And then I realized I can see Todd to my left at this point in time. You know what I mean? And I whipped around and there was nothing there. So, and Jason had the camera on me, but it was so far away and at night to where we couldn't, you know what I mean? We couldn't air it. There's nothing that could be aired. That's what we talked about. And then, we did give Todd did, Jason did, a howl. And then later on we heard a really weird owl out of nowhere. This owl just sounded odd. And then Jason saw something. We tried to catch it, but we couldn't. And we still aired the episode going, okay, yeah, we got nothing on footage, but, we had a lot of fun trying to find it,
Well, it's like this guy. He approached me and another researcher one time. We were doing this event in East Tennessee, and he said, "I'll give you 25. I've got $50,000. I'll give you $25,000 a piece to take me out and have a Bigfoot encounter." Me and the other researcher looked at each other and said, "Hell yeah, we'll take you out there." So a couple of nights later, we took him out. Nothing happens. Nothing at all. We went out. We done what we normally done. I like to go out and sit, just listen. That's most of it is Bigfooting is just sitting around and listening. The woods will tell you a story when you shut your mouth. And at the end of the night, I said, "Are we doing this in cash or you write a check? Because if you write a check, I'm going to need you to come with me to my bank." And he's like, "What do you mean?" "I didn't have no Bigfoot encounter." And I said, "You never said you wanted to see a Bigfoot. You said you wanted to have a real Bigfooting encounter." "Well, sir, that's exactly what you just got. This is what we do. Bigfooting 101. 90% of it is sitting around waiting for something to happen.
That's a fact.
10% of it is going back to the car and sitting there and wondering, what did I do wrong?"
I'm not gonna lie to you. Like, the one area where I just sent you the pictures of. So I sent you a picture of, you got the knuckle track there, and then we went back and I brought Chumming with the Spirits, another great show. They came down from Kansas City because they wanted to go out, and they do a lot of paranormal, but they wanted to do some cryptid stuff. So I brought them down and said, "Hey, I got this hot spot. We had some, interesting things happen to us. I can't, that's where I found the knuckle track at." I said, "I make no promises on anything happening." And they're like, "Okay, that's cool." And all day long, I'm not going to lie to you, like you just said, it was nothing. Nothing. Now at night, I'm not going to lie, it did. The evening, it picked up. They got interesting. That's when the eye shine, and I've never seen eye shine like this at all. To where, I mean, it caught me off guard to the point where Chris had his sidearm drawn. We were trying to figure out, what the hell is this thing? Because there's nothing in Arkansas that should be this big. You know what I mean? And then on thermal, we watched something big on thermal walk away, and then we had something else on thermal look like it was playing peekaboo with us behind a tree, and then we had a crazy another owl. I don't know what it is about them and owls. Another owl sound, but then the people in the front of the house, the property owner's wife, uh, Dave's wife, and Larry, they were in the front of the house, and all of a sudden they go, "Is that one of the guys?" And this gray shape bipedal thing started walking towards them off the road, and they thought it was one of us walking, and nope, it wasn't. And he's on the radio saying, "Hey, well, I've got something walking." And I said, "Dude, record, record, record." And we couldn't catch it on camera, and it just disappeared. So, and then the night got quiet after that.
Yeah, I told this guy, I said, man, you can camp out here. You can do this 365 days a year and do it for a long time. Nothing will happen. You can't buy a Bigfoot encounter. You can't predict. There's an algorithm that we several of us developed that's used on several different TV shows that gives us a roundabout idea on where these creatures could be certain times a year. It's not a guarantee. None of this is a guarantee. And whoever's listening to this, just keep that in mind. Just because you post on Facebook and X and Instagram, I'm going Bigfooting tonight, doesn't mean Bigfoot's going to be out Bigfooting tonight. And I know you as well as I do. I've been out so many times. If I based my research and all that on going out and something happening, I wouldn't be doing this. There's no way. Now, this is a discouraging line of stuff we do. Um, Paranormal teams have got it dick sometimes, man. They can go out and get a recording of somebody scruffing their shoulders or their pants together, and slow that down, and you can hear a word's pareidolia of the ear. You can hear something. It might sound like a word to you, and they can say that's 100% paranormal. Okay. Bigfooting, on the other hand, we don't get that. We don't get that luxury. Pareidolia, I see that a lot. I've seen that a lot, close to 30 years now, and I it has to be pretty compelling. Now, your pictures you sent me, the knuckle prints, that's actually pretty interesting. Uh, Jeff Meldrum gave me the knuckle prints, the Paul Freeman knuckle prints that that he had a collection of. Yeah, all in all, man, research and I got this book out. I'm going to start plugging stuff because I know
I
you
was
want to get
about to
off
tell
here.
you that. I want you to tell everybody where they can find your books, where they can
Anywhere,
find you.
anywhere. I'm everywhere but nowhere. Um, the book that's out now is called The Bigfoot Volume One. I'll give you one guess what it's about,
Loch Ness
and
Monster.
the Loch Ness monster. Um, the Bigfoot Volume One is out. You can find it on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Hanger One Publishing. Um, if you type in Michael W. Cook, The Bigfoot Volume One on your Google search engine, there's going to be all kinds of stuff pop up on it. And just click one of them and go on there. I think they're about $20 online. Um, if you catch me at an event somewhere, they're exactly $20 in person. Um, the Bigfoot Volume 2, spelled TWOO, will take a different look than the first book, Volume 1. Volume 2, TWOO, will take a supernatural turn, and we dive into uh, cloaking, more of the supernatural look at Bigfoot and what they are, cloaking, portals, mind speak, so forth and so on. Um, then me, you ain't gonna find me nowhere until next year sometime. I don't have any events planned until June the 6th, and that's going to be out in Little Rock at the first ever Arkansas Cryptid Fest. And of course, you can find me on Travel Channel and These Woods Are Haunted, Paranormal Caught on Camera. And um, yeah, if you by chance see me out in public, whether it's at work or Walmart or a restaurant, by all means, come by and say hi. But don't expect me to entertain you with Bigfoot ideologies and all that stuff. Because we have a work time and we have a personal time. So, um, but I've got a few projects coming up. I've got the Bigfoot, or I'm sorry, the TV show Bigfoot and Friends that will be out in the next year or so, and then I've got another little project I'm working on that will hopefully become my full time job after next August, and I can say goodbye to my day job. Um, but yeah, I've had a very good time, Matt.
I'm glad. Thank you so very much for coming on, and it means the world to me. So yeah, don't go anywhere. Stick around just for a second. So everybody, that was another episode of the Drunken Cryptids, and I do appreciate y'all listening in. Thank you for liking and sharing. Definitely check out the Patreon page, Buy Me a Coffee. Check out the Facebook page. We update everything there. The Cryptid Arkansas Cryptid Fest is going to be June 6th, 2026, here in North Little Rock, Arkansas. Looking forward to seeing everybody come out, have a good time, meet and greets, all that fun stuff. But, until next time, again, this were the Miss Real and the beer is cold. Y'all stay safe.